Hello, my name is LoG and welcome to part 2 of this brother-to-brother solo tutorial. The lick that we're going to go over today is one of the faster licks of this solo, so because of that, at the end of this video, we're going to play over a backing track that gradually increases tempo from 80 to 140 BPM, much like I would in one of my power-ups. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and now let's get on to the lesson. All right, before we learn this part, we first need to go over what the chord progression is. Fortunately, it's pretty much exactly the same as the second repetition from part 1, which was simply B minor and G major, and each of those chords setup chords, each of those chords 2s and 5s. So that looked like this: B minor, then 2-5 of G major, which was A minor, D7, and then G major, and then 2-5 of B minor, which was the C sharp super sus, and then the F sharp dominant with some of those added tones. The difference here is we are not going back to B minor. We are actually changing keys, and we're going to be setting up a B flat major, which we'll talk more about in the next part, because that's where we'll talk about the lick that happens during that section. But we're pretty much playing this F sharp dominant 7th with maybe a sharp 5, and then the next chord that we're playing is going to be this. That's like an F, feels like an F super sus, but again, we'll talk about that more in the next part. So that's pretty much it. Let me play this chord progression along with the solo so you can hear kind of what it sounds like in context. So here we go. Okay, so let's get started with the actual part played a little slower. It sounds like this. And also, for the purposes of this lesson, I'm not going to show you the part up here. I'm going to move back 12 frets, show you what it looks like right here, just because it's a little bit easier to see because my fingers aren't so crammed up top. So again, learn the passage up here and you can simply copy and paste it up 12 frets and it's going to be exactly the same. So this lick, as we go through it, is really two sounds that make up kind of the bulk of the lick. There are a couple other small ones which we'll go over, but there are really two main sounds that make up the majority of that passage. So let's just get started. Again, all of this is over the progression that we just went over, and the progression is really going to dictate what these licks are, as you'll see here. So the first 4 notes, probably the easiest, just looks like this. That's over the B minor, the last beat, the 4th beat of the B minor chord. And we're simply playing C sharp, D, E, C sharp. That's B minor's 2, flat 3, 4, and 2. Notice which note is being played the most out of those 3, the 2. Why? Because we're featuring it because it's in the chord, very similar to what we did over in part 1 where we were really nailing that 2 a lot. Same thing happening right here. Now after that comes the next main idea, which sounds like this. And then we'll continue with the rest after that. This is a very, very typical sound or tactic that improvisers use when they are playing over a 5 of a chord. So in this case, that lick starts right at the 5 of G major. So here's our G major. That lick starts right at the 2-5. So even though the chords, yes, it's 2 and 5, a lot of improvisers will just look at that as like a 5 of, just D7, and then they'll play. And this idea, where it really comes from, it mostly comes from playing a 5 of a minor chord, but we're just doing the same exact sound 5 of a major chord. And again, it will work regardless as long as you're landing on the right note. I'm not going to get too deep into this idea, but if you do want to kind of see a deep dive lesson into this concept and how it's created, feel free to click the link above or below in the description at any time to check out a full lesson that I've done in the past on this topic. So the idea is this. If you have a 5 chord, let's say D7, and you're moving to G major or G minor, really, what you can do is go up a half step from the D, so here's the D, up a half step, that's E flat, and you play minor. And not just any minor, you play melodic minor. Melodic minor is simply a minor scale with a natural 6 and a natural 7. Or you can think about it as a major scale, E flat major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but with a flat 3. Whichever one makes more sense to you, think about it like that. So if I just play that scale, the full scale right here looks like this. So again, that's the chord that's actually happening, but we are thinking E flat melodic minor, which looks like this. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, natural 6, natural 7, 1. That's our sound. The reason why this works, and again, I'm not going to get too far into it. If you want to check it out, check out that lesson I mentioned earlier, but it contains a variety of really colorful notes that work perfectly when playing this 5 of sound, especially when you're moving to minor, these kind of sounds. But obviously, we're moving to major, and it works really great over those sounds also, especially because of how this particular lick is resolving. Resolves like this. So here's the exact passage. Again, we're thinking this, right? E flat minor. The passage looks like this. Here's our root, our E flat. That's the sound that we're really thinking, E flat minor. We're starting on the 2, so there's the 2, the F, and we're walking back like this. 2, 1, natural 7, natural 6, 5, skipping the 4, going right to the flat 3, 2, 1, and then resolving here to the D right there. So it looks like this. Really common lick that you hear all the time in this style. So if I play into it from the little B minor lick, sounds like this. Right? So we're doing that B minor passage and then reaching up, starting that E flat melodic minor idea. Now, this concept works really well like this over G major and G minor because of the note that this lick is landing on. This lick, if you notice, lands here. The idea, now obviously the actual passage keeps going, which we're going to talk about here in a second, but the idea of the E flat melodic minor run ends on this D right there. The reason why this is an important note to land on is D as a note is in both G minor and G major. So regardless of which sound, which tonality you're moving to, if you play that lick and land on D, it's always going to work. As opposed to playing a lick and landing on a note that's specific to the minor chord. Let's say you played an E flat melodic minor lick and landed on B flat, right? That's really only going to work if you're moving to G minor, because G major doesn't have a B flat, it has a B natural, right? Same thing, if I played some melodic minor lick and landed on B natural, and that's how I practiced it, that one's only going to work over G major, not necessarily G minor. But if you land on a common tone like a 5, it works perfectly with both sounds. Again, if you'd like to dive more into this topic, check out the link above or below in the description for a lesson that I did on this exact topic. So again, let's go over that lick one more time, and then we'll move into the next part. Sounded like this. Here's our little B minor, reaching up, starting our descent on E flat melodic minor. That's our root right there. That's what we're visualizing. We're just starting on the 2. Looks like this. And that's it. Now we're here on the D. We are technically resolved to the G. Now, the interesting thing is, that's what the lick is, but in the tune, in the passage, the 2-5 is still happening when that D is hit. But the rest of the lick, as you'll see, he plays as though he's just playing over G major. So let's get into this next part. This next part, even though there's a lot of different stuff going on, it really is pretty much just G major. You can think about it as G major or G major 7. If you want to think about it as E minor, I suppose you can, but the sound is really just simply G major with some chromaticism and some emphasis on notes like 7s and 2s and stuff. So let's get started with that part. So we're just coming down that E flat melodic minor. We're now on the D right here. And from here on, it's pretty much G major. So from here, we're walking down a literal G major scale. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, D, C, B, A, G. The only difference is we're not just going right to the G. We are doing the technical term for this is chromatic enclosure. I just call it trapping a note or trapping the 1. And what we're doing is we're walking down the scale from the D. So 5, 4, 3, 2. Instead of going to 1, we play the note ahead of the 1, behind the 1, and then the 1, regardless of if those notes are in the key. Like this note is not in the key, but it doesn't matter. We're simply using it to kind of temporarily push the 1 a little bit further so we don't resolve immediately like you naturally would if you just went down a scale, and it just adds some extra color. So again, that passage right? So walking down the scale, instead of just nailing it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're playing 5, 4, 3, 2, trap the 1 like that, and then eventually hit the 1. So after that, after we hit this root right here, this is G major still, walking up a straight up G major 7 arpeggio, 1, 3, 5, 7, like that. Now we're going to trap a different note this time in a little different way. We're going to trap the 6. So if this is 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 7, that's 6 right there. Now watch this. We're going to sort of trap this note as well. 1, 3, 5, 7. We're going to play the note 1 fret ahead of the 6, and then we're going to play the note a whole step back from the 6 right there. So we could have done this. That's the note ahead of the 6, back a fret from the 6, and then hit the 6. Instead, he's just playing the note ahead of the 6, then the D, which is back a whole step from the 6, and then the 6. That looks like this. 1, 3, 5, 7, trap the 6, like that. Now, for the fingering, I think I've been doing this. Something like that. Again, fingering, I'm going to let you kind of figure out what's comfortable for you. But for me, I think I've been going middle pointer, pinky, middle pointer, ring, pointer. Maybe, I'm not sure. But again, figure out whatever makes most sense to you. So coming down from this D one more time, walking down. Trap the root, up the major 7. Then trap the 6, just like that. At this point, we're walking up what feels like E minor pretty much, but E minor, G major are the same thing, so it feels like this. Right, we're just walking up 6, 7, 1, 2, 3 of G. Once we get to the B right here, the 3rd of G, we walk up a little, a little arpeggio. That's just simply B, D, F sharp, so it's like 3, 5, 7 of G. So I'll play that one more time. Just like that, really simple. Once we get to the F sharp on top, the 7 of G, right, again, it works really well because the chord is A major 7, so we're just simply playing it in our lead. We chromatic walk up to the A, the 2, and then back, so it looks like this. Really simple. Again, are there notes that aren't in the key? Yeah, that note's not in the key, but it doesn't matter. We're just using that sound to help us get to this note so it's a little bit more colorful. So again, walking up from the F sharp, back to the A. Once we hit the A, we simply just go back to the F sharp. And that's kind of the end of that phrase, and then we do one more afterwards. So let me play that whole thing coming from this D right here. This is all G major. So if I describe it as I'm playing, down G major, trap the 1, up G major 7 arpeggio, trap the 6, walk up 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, little staircase arpeggio. Almost kind of feels like B minor, pretty much is B minor. B, D, F sharp, chromatic walk up to A, hit the A, go back to F sharp. Let me play all of that from the very beginning. Sounds like this. E flat melodic minor. We have resolved. Now, the interesting thing, like I mentioned earlier, even though when you play this E flat melodic minor, it feels like that's the resolution, but the reality is the G, the 2, 5, and then the G doesn't really happen until here. That is actually where the G resolves. So he's actually dipping into the G sound before the G chord even happens, which again, doesn't matter. It sounds awesome. So that's something just to keep in mind as you're playing this. So now the very last little part after we did this, we're now simply moving up here, and there's a variety of different fingerings to play this, but this is kind of how I'm playing it. It's still pretty much G major, even though at this point, the chord progression has changed to the 2, 5 of B, the C sharp supersus, F sharp dominant. That's not really being played necessarily in this lick. It's really just G major still. He's just kind of implying some of the same licks, just in slightly different ways. So after that, we're jumping up to this E right here. That's the 6 of G. And we're playing 6, 7, 5 of G like that. E, F sharp B, or E, F sharp D, excuse me. After we do this, we walk down to E like this. That's the D, B, A, G chromatic down to E like that. So I'll play that slower without talking. again, a huge variety of ways to play this. I'll leave it up to you to figure out the fingering, but that's how I'm playing it. Again, this is pretty much all just G major. 6, 7, 5, 3, 2, 1 chromatic down to the 6. Once we hit the 6, we almost do the exact same lick that we did earlier when we started on the 6. If you remember, we were walking up a scale. That's exactly what we're doing here, except we're not doing the little chromatic walk at the top. So this is that lick one more time. Now we hit the 6 and we're walking up the same way that we did earlier. Except that time we're walking up the arpeggio straight from the 7 to the 2 of G. So that's again E, F sharp, G, A, B, D, F sharp. Don't chromatic, just F sharp up to the A. And then we finally finish this whole lick by moving up a fret and doing that. Now we're kind of, that's the key change that has just happened. And what we're pretty much doing is playing 5, 3, 1, 2, 1 of this note, which is E flat. So it's like a little E flat major arpeggio that we're doing because the chord at this moment is this, and that is essentially an F super sus. And if you want to think about it like this, it's an E flat major chord with F in the bass. So the solo is just literally playing, 3/4 of the chord, right? That's pretty much what's happening. So, and again, that's after this run. And it's a bend up top. I'm doing a hammer on right here, but you can do a bend or you can do whatever you want. So let me play all of that, or let me just play the last little passage and then I'll review the whole thing. Here's that last passage, sounded like this. Let's review the whole thing. So B minor starting off. E flat melodic minor, G, continuing G, key change E flat major up top, even though the chord is actually this, which we'll talk more about that one in the next video. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So take everything that you're just doing, pop it up an octave, and it's going to be exactly the same. Just a lot more crammed, of course. So that's pretty much it. I'm not really going to get into the techniques because, everyone's going to be playing this in a different way. I would probably recommend that you just practice alternate picking this whole thing because that's pretty much what you should do. Obviously, if you like the phrases of adding in some pull-offs or hammer-ons or whatnot, my personal technique is a lot of picking fingers, so that's kind of what I'm doing, not throughout, but kind of sneaking it in there once in a while. You can experiment however you'd like to make this comfortable, but that is the passage. So again, what are the concepts? Over B minor, we're playing B minor ideas. Over the 2-5 of G, we're playing that core sound that so many people do, and that's the 5 chord, up a half step, melodic minor. Whatever idea you want to play. Such an insanely common sound. So again, you look at the chord that you're targeting, like G major, go to its 5, D7, move up a half step, play melodic minor, or just minor triad if you want to, that works also. And then after that, we play just really G. It's the whole thing is pretty much G with some light chromaticism, maybe implying some other sounds like E minor a little bit, maybe B minor because we got a little B minor arpeggio in there. It's just a variety of sounds that all kind of live inside this G major, sphere, I suppose. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're going to end this video with the tempo walk-up that I mentioned. This tempo walk-up is going to go from 80 to 140. And because the key change is happening, I did have to add like a extra little bar in there just to get us back into the original key, because jumping from this to that is pretty awkward. So I just did a little bit of a transition there. So play along with the video as best you can. Obviously, I would learn the lick first before you try to play along with the video. But once you have the lick down and you have it memorized, feel free to come back to this feel free to come back to this point and we'll start along with this track. Again, that runs from 80 to 140. right, that does it for part 2 of this brother to brother solo tutorial. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you all in part 3.